Today, I'm really excited to have Mimika Cooney here with me from Charlotte, North Carolina. Mimika is an international award-winning photographer, published author, speaker, and small business marketing expert. She owns a residential portrait studio specializing in beauty, glamour, and baby portraiture, and enjoys sharing her marketing and photography knowledge both online and at workshops with other professional photographers and small business owners. Born in South Africa, Mimika received her photographic training in England and is an accredited licentiate by the British Institute of Professional Photographers and the Society of Wedding and Portrait Photographers. She's also the author of 2 popular books on baby photography and creating a baby boutique photography business. So, hi Mimika, it's great to have you here with us again.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to chat to you and share whatever we can with your audience.
That last chat that we did about branding, it was really great. I really enjoyed that, and I know we got a lot of great feedback. So we've got you back again, but this time to talk about the baby photography side of your business.
Perfect. Well, that's great because that's something I've been doing primarily as a focus for the last 7 years. And it was a great transition from doing weddings and portraits, but definitely babies are the bread and butter.
What was that first spark of inspiration for you to become a baby photographer?
It was a couple of reasons, really. I mean, I started in photography, of course, I was a mom with a camera taking pictures of my kids, and I always loved taking pictures of babies. But I remember it was when Anne Geddes came out with her book and all those, babies in flower pots. I thought that was the cutest thing, having babies styled in a certain way where you have an idea and a sort of aesthetic that you want to look, and then you could create the images around that. And of course, when I started in photography, a natural thing was to start in weddings, and it didn't seem like I could do babies or focus on that yet until I kind of got my teeth wet into the actual photography industry. And then once I sort of transitioned into portraits, I really always had this sort of like, it would be really fun to be able to do babies because I love to be able to have more of a control over a session. And of course, with babies, for me, I've always liked the idea of working indoors. I know some people are like, oh, being indoors, but to me, it suited the way I like to work and having more control of the lighting and the props and the styling. So I had originally started my business in England, and I was a 50% weddings, 50% portraits. So then when I came over to the US in 2006, I used it as a time to rebrand myself and to figure out where I wanted to go with my business. So I just started learning as much as I could, went to several workshops, read a lot, just practice where I could, and eventually it took about 18 months to transition out of weddings, and then I primarily focused on portraiture. And I realized very quickly, living here in the US, that being able to own a niche and being well known for that was so important because, with all the photographers and with all the competition in the market, it was all great saying I'm a photographer, but it didn't gel with anybody. Like, okay, that's great. So my aunt's a photographer, big deal. And I realized unless I could identify my work with something that was distinct and people would know, oh, that's what she does, I really realized that that's where I wanted to go. And then the other reason I decided that I wanted to be a baby photographer is also I wanted to have another baby myself. And I really needed to be in a situation where I didn't have to go to photo sessions at sunset or sunrise. I didn't have to be on location. That I didn't want to work on weekends because I've got 3 kids and they're all busy in 3 different directions. So it was really designed around the lifestyle that I wanted. And for me, it made sense because, moms with babies are usually at home with their babies. They don't have to go back to work right away. Some do, but in this case, especially like newborns in the baby's first year, they could come to my studio, which is based in my home. So I was working around the time that suited me when the kids were out of the house and at school. And then soon enough, I've always had this eye for more like bright color and sort of like very sort of vivacious type of look, very color pop and styled and very arty type of a look. And I just started to develop it that way. And I still do, primarily my baby photography and having them on what I call a baby milestone package or a plan really helped to keep my business consistent. Because, weddings are seasonal, holiday portrait or, taking pictures of families at Christmas time is seasonal. And I wanted something that would be year round. I could kind of switch on like a tap. When I wanted to do more, I could crank it up. When I wanted to do less, I could do less. And really, that's how it ended up. So it was by design and also by really thinking, what it is that I love to do, and also looking at what would make me more money, because I realized soon that doing portraiture and selling wall art to decorate a baby nursery or a client's home would make me far more profit than selling an album or a wedding digital files. So it was all kind of by design, because I thought long and hard about this. If I wanted to have the lifestyle I wanted, I didn't want to work weekends, and I didn't want to have to run a retail studio because I didn't want that overhead. So if I wanted to have the opportunity to work when I wanted to around the kids, I had to make it work for me. And of course, because my studio area is downstairs, we have like a 2-story. So it is very intrusive. It's not like I could have like usually during the summer is really hard because the kids are at home and the TV's blaring and the studio is right next to the kitchen. So for me, I had to figure out, what was the best way for me to create this business model around the time and the lifestyle. And so for me, really it was the morning only. I'd have 2 sessions in the morning, like 9:30 and 11, four mornings a week, and that worked great.
Now, there are lots of different business models in photography, and there are different ways to run a newborn and baby photography business, of course. So what is the business model that you chose? I mean, for example, are you a high or low volume business, high price, low price? Where do you kind of fit yourself in?
I realized, in redesigning my business, I didn't want to have to work so many late hours. And I didn't want a volume-based business. It didn't suit me working from home and having the responsibilities. I really realized soon that I had to be a boutique model of having low volume but high price, which meant, there's pros and cons for both. If you're in a retail studio, obviously volume makes sense. You want to get people through the door, so you can offer a very low barrier to entry to get them to at least try your services. But because it was in my home, I needed to make sure that I really vetoed the client, that they were a great fit, that they knew what was expected of them, what the investment would be. Because being a boutique studio, I needed to go the full 9 yards. I mean, I specialized in wall portraits and decorating, a baby's nursery. So a client had to be in that mindset that they knew that they wanted that design help. And I even branded myself as your wall art interior designer. So just like an interior designer would go into someone's home. So the whole perception of the value of and the brand of the product was, okay, I'm going to spend more time with you, but they're going to invest more. So that was also by design. And this was all right about 2007, before we had the whole 2008 nonsense. So it was much easier to convince people, not to say it is harder now, but it can be done. But finding that those ideal clients proved to be much harder because, of course, the higher you go up the affordability scale, those type of clients are a little more picky. They're a little bit more harder to find. You can't just run a special on Facebook and they come running. They tend to want to be a little bit more. They want to hear about you from quite a few different places. So I had to put a little more effort into building the kind of brand that I wanted. So yeah, definitely higher priced but lower volume worked well for me.
And you mentioned the boutique model just now, which is something that we talked a little bit about the last time that we had you on as well. Can you just very quickly, for the sake of people who didn't listen to that last one yet, explain what you mean by a boutique model?
Yeah, well, I mean, a boutique model business, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about photography. Any kind of boutique means it's a lot more specific and customized to a client's needs. So it's not like you can just grab a product and off the shelf and walk out. With the boutique, you have more options, you have it more styled. So for my business, instead of someone saying, oh, I want to have baby pictures, can you come to my home and give me all the images on a CD, which is a fine model and works for some people, I wanted them to come to me, which is number one. Second of all, I wanted to give them products that they could not buy anywhere else. So I really specialized in the kind of wall portraits where the first step was for them to come for a consultation, which was twofold. First of all, for me to assess whether they were the right client for me. And second of all, was for them to fall in love with the products that I have available. Everything from framed artwork to gallery blocks, canvas collections, special album collections, fashion jewelry, designer bags, all those kind of extras that make a customized experience. And of course, having them coming to see me, took the idea that I'm a designer. I'm going to help you design your baby's nursery or your home. So we're going to take pictures of the before, of where your room space is. We're going to measure that whole very much hand-holding kind of model where you spend more time with each individual client, but then they do invest more. So, there's two trains of thought. You can do either. If you just want high volume and you want them in and out quickly, then, lower price works well. But for me, I just preferred working with clients on that type of model where I had more control of it, and then they would see the value in what I had to offer and then invest in the portraiture that way.
And I expect the branding becomes even more critical and important when you're trying to operate something like a higher end boutique type of model, right?
It does. And, I learned some hard lessons along the way. Like when I first got here, and I managed to make, for me, I'm all about relationships. Before I even look at spending money online on Facebook ads, I'm all about, okay, who's in my local market? Who is already attracting the client that I'm looking for? And how can I partner with them? Like, how can I piggyback off the effort if they already are in that area and people are listening to them? how could I work with them? One example was when I decided I wanted to make the switch from weddings to portraits, I thought, okay, the first thing I need to do is get my name out there and have some artwork up where someone could see me. So I partnered with a local 3D, 4D ultrasound company. Now, the lady who owned the company, she had high volume. She would just take any client that comes through the door who would pay her for a sonogram of their baby. So my idea was, okay, I put wall art on the wall, and then she would hand out postcards with my details on them. The great thing was that it helped to get my name out there really quickly. But even though she was approaching pregnant women, which is really the first port of call who you need to be approaching before a baby's even born is the mom is pregnant, I wasn't really paying attention to the type of clients she was sending me. So unfortunately, after a while, she would be getting complaints from her clients saying, oh, I can't believe you referred me to this photographer. She's so expensive. Because if they were like cheap, they were not going to see the value in wall art. They just wanted something quick and they wanted it done as quick and cheap as possible. But I definitely did get some great clients out of that. But what I did learn is that I really needed to be more specific about the type of clients I wanted to attract. Whereas opposed to, I do baby photography, come and book a session. And then 50% of them would be like, annoyed or frustrated because of the prices that are offered. But at the end of the day, it was all about, okay, I can't just come and say to someone, oh, I'll take pictures of your baby and you're going to spend $2,000 with me. A lot of them would be like, yeah, right. I soon realized that you can't just come out the back, charging those. It's a build. You have to get them. So you still want to get them in the door. And this is when I think will be a good chance for us to go into more detail about the actual baby plan, because I know a lot of photographers offer this, and it really is a great way to generate quick leads as well as getting people into a system. Because remember, I mentioned earlier, I wanted that consistent income. I didn't want to have to go from sale to sale to sale and have to tell people, because, a cold sale and someone hasn't heard from you, you've got to work a lot harder than someone who already knows you. So my view was, I've just made all that effort to get them in the door. Yes, they probably spend the most with me when the baby's a newborn because they're still excited and it's before they realize how much babies actually cost. Why would I want to say goodbye to those clients after I've gone through all that effort? We've got a relationship. They trust me. They like my work. So for me, it made sense to keep the relationship going. So I had played with a baby, I call it a baby milestone package, where they could buy while they were pregnant and they would come back 3 to 5 times a year. So some years I did newborn sitting and standing, which is like 6 months and 12 months. What that meant for me is once I signed up this client, I knew they were going to come back to me for another 2 times, which at least guaranteed a minimum spend of, say, whatever, $300 or $500. So I knew from a cash flow perspective, I wouldn't have to spend more money on getting another client because this client would be coming back again. So for me, that is really how I was able to ramp up and get into my baby photography, and it worked really well, really quickly, because once you had them signed up and committed, the pressure is taken off of them because they're, money spent is money forgotten, right? So once they spent that, and the baby milestone package for them to sign up gave them an incentive with, a call to action. Like if you want to, I would give you a discounted price as opposed to, say my newborn session was $200, and if they wanted to add on another 2 sessions, so they were $100 each. So for experiment's sake, let's say 4 sessions with me would be, or 3 sessions with me would be $300. If they bought this package while they were pregnant, they could apply, like say, a $50 discount, or they could get an extra product thrown in. And that is the beauty of the baby bundle, is that by them signing up to the bundle, they either save or get extra goodies that they wouldn't necessarily came in if they only did one-off sessions. And that's a great way to get them hooked in. And I would say, obviously depending on your market, but I've seen some people offer baby bundles for like 3 sessions as low as $99, which would be a volume base if you just want them in the door. Or some people would offer $500. So again, pricing is a whole nother discussion, but it all just depends on how you want your business to run, how many times you want to see the clients, and what it is you want them to pay. But for me, it worked really well, having a package and then saying you sign up now, you get a $50 discount, plus you get, the first time around we did it, there was they would get a frame of 3 images, so a facial shot from each session. And they would only get the frame at the end of the year, and that was like $299 or something. It was kind of a very small frame of 3 5x5 images. And then at one stage I did you can get a free 8x10 at each session, and sometimes, and if they spent a certain amount, so you can kind of play with the pricing models. But the fact that you're having them coming back again is huge, and that really is what's going to build a business quickly.
Let's stay with these baby plans for a bit longer, because I'm really interested to learn a little bit more about the details about how your particular plan works. I imagine that there's a lot of logistics and admin sort of behind the scenes type organizational things that need to happen to make these plans work. I mean, you have to know where people are in the plan, when they're next due to come in.
Definitely the way I managed to stay on top of things without going crazy was using my studio management software. Now, I used to use Successware, which was able to keep track of when the client was, and then it would send automatic reminders. Okay, this client now is, you send them an email a month before they're due to come in and say, hi, you're due to come in for your session again. So it takes a bit of time to set things up. And then from Successware, I've moved to ShootQ, which I still use today, just because I just love the online version of it where you can log in anywhere. And I used to actually have an assistant who used to come 3 mornings a week, and she used to literally just send out the emails. But once I got onto ShootQ, I didn't need someone reminding people, because that was annoying when I'd make appointments and people would just forget or just wouldn't pitch. So having the system where it automatically reminds you was huge. So I'd literally plug them in. My workflow would trigger automatically at 5 months later and say, okay, you're due to come in for your next session, and then again for the next one. So, and of course, we had a growing list of a database of our babies, and then when they had their birthdays, and then they would transition. And then, of course, what was great, because they were babies and then they grew, usually mom and dad would either add to the family with more kids, or, they'd want family portraits. So again, this whole model, you get them in and you start to build them up. They trust you, and then the baby model, then they start to grow out of that, but then they transition into other things. So in terms of managing it, it wasn't that hard because everything was automated.
So it kind of takes care of itself then for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, once you plug them in the system, the effort is really getting them in the first time. And then with the studio management system, you just set the dates of how often or when they need to be reminded. They automatically get the emails, their phone or their email, and you can even sync it to your calendar if you want someone to be able to go and book a session themselves. And there's so many other options out there. There's Studio Cloud, there's Successware, there's ShootQ, and there's several of them that are coming out all the time with these extra features that help you manage your business. But definitely you want a system automated for consistency, and also just it's more professional. People know what to expect. And the other thing what I loved about the automated emails is the emails could tell the things that I didn't want to say, like how my payment system, like you are expected to pay 50% now, and then you can pay the rest over 2 installments, or we only accept Visa and MasterCard, or please come to your ordering appointment and be prepared to pay for your order on that day. All the kind of things that make you feel like, oh, I don't want to say that to people. But all the kind of policies that we wanted people to know, obviously in a nice way, that's when those emails proved very useful.
What about photographers who don't have a sophisticated studio management system? How can they set something like this up?
It doesn't have to be sophisticated at all. I mean, anybody can do it. It's literally, if you know how to do a Excel spreadsheet, you can set yourself up. I mean, I think ShootQ now is $39 a month. That literally replaced my studio assistant, who was costing me $1,000 a month. So, I think the thing is, what people think is it has to be more complicated than it needs to be. And as long as if you're doing the effort for, like, even if you're writing emails, for example, when someone sends an inquiry, it's crazy business to go and have to reply to each and every individual person again if it's stuff that you're repeating. And that's what I soon realized, is because, babies are at the same stage and they behave a certain way at newborn as they do at 6 months and as they do at 12 months, that the stuff that I was telling my clients, putting it into a system that even if it's like a PDF that you can email them, like what to expect and what to wear. And these are all things I developed over the years, which a lot of the information I actually share in the 2 books I've written, which is the Boutique Baby Photography, which is the first one, which goes through baby's first year, and my most recent one, which is Newborn Photography, which is primarily about the newborn stage. And I really do talk about a lot of the systems that I use. And as I said, if you're figuring a workflow that works, instead of repeating yourself and having to do it again one by one, you can plug it into your email program. Even if you're only using email, at least write it down, automate it. I'm all for that. Anything you can systemize, automate, or delegate, I'm all for that.
Having systems to take care of repetitive tasks is one of the things that will really save somebody a lot of time in their business, for sure. I want to go back a little bit to the clients, the people that you serve with this type of business, and talk a little bit about how targeted they are. Because on one hand, you could say, well, your ideal client is basically any pregnant mom, but that's probably not the case. We already talked a little bit about that earlier on with regards to people, who some thought that it was expensive to get baby photography done, others thought it was okay. How do you qualify your ideal clients?
basically, you got to figure out, that's why, branding and knowing who your market is. And that's why in part of my school, Capture School, I talk a lot about, people think, oh, here she goes again about branding and client avatar, but it is so important. You can't get to the end of the line and then the worst experiences I had that I learned the hard way were just taking any business on in any job just because they would pay me money, getting into the sales room, and then the end of the day they don't want to pay you and they complain or they beat you up on price and, oh, I can't believe you're charging so much for photography. Nobody wants to have that experience. And what I realized is I had to re-engineer the process. If they were complaining at the end, it means something was broken, which meant I shouldn't have allowed them in the door in the first place. If they weren't aware of what the investment of time and money would be with me, there was really no point in me even taking pictures of them. And that was one of the hardest lessons to learn. So when I was working with that 3D, 4D ultrasound company, I was getting phone calls, at least 3 a day, from these people. Oh, I'd love to do a photo session. And I realized it's no point in just booking them to come and see me and wasting my time. I really had to be more specific. So I started asking questions that helped me identify them. And it helped me figure out who my ideal client, and I had an avatar, like even for my assistant who used to answer the phone. I would have a series of questions would be like, is this your first baby? Because someone who's having their first baby has more money to spend and usually is more emotionally invested into doing all the pretty stuff and all the extras than someone who's on their third baby who's now pinching pennies. Tell me about, do you know if you're having a girl or a boy? Because even sometimes if they don't want to know what they're having is another clue. Tell me about things like helping them identify who they are. And along the ways, asking questions like figuring out that my ideal client was usually a working mom who's probably waited later in life to get married and have children, that she's either gone through IVF, so she's going to value these portraits of her baby because she struggled to have a baby, or someone who really values the artwork, because I really made sure my brand was distinguishing factor between me and a lot of photographers was the styling. Like I made sure that my style was completely different, was true to what I like to shoot, and had that artistic feel to it. So automatically someone who would phone and say, oh, I got your card from the ultrasound company, I want to have pictures done, how much is it? I want to get an 8x10. That would be okay. If they're asking me about the price of an 8x10, they're on a budget and they're probably not the ideal fit because they're budget conscious. Where those people and clients who would say, oh, I just love the artwork, I saw your pictures on your website and I just love that, it just makes me feel, the word feel was great because that meant, ooh, she's thought about it. It makes me feel like so nostalgic. Oh, and I just love the one. When they start using words like feel and love and art and beautiful, these were all my distinguishing words that distinguished my brand. So it was almost like ding, ding, ding. Okay, these are the things they're saying. So that helped me identify the clients. So instead of like, oh, how much is your 8x10s or how much is your package? And I want it all in a CD. If that's your client, great. But for me, that was a red flag. That meant that they really didn't see the value in having me print them for them, and they probably would want to take the DVD to Costco or CD or just print the stuff themselves. So I kind of figured this, and this was all by trial and error, really, realizing and just speaking to people like what it is they valued. And it took about 6 months for me to really define my target and my ideal client avatar. But once I knew that, it was very easy for us to identify them, and then we could go after them. It's kind of a process that you go through in figuring out who you are, who it is you want to target, and then being very specific as to who the clients are. So when they phone or email you, you know whether they're a good fit or not.
Now, a lot of the photographers that I talk to complain all the time about competition. They tell me, oh, does this photographer just sprouted up in the corner of the neighborhood? Somebody else has just popped up on this street and that street, and they're just popping up everywhere, it seems. And they get very worried about the fact that these new people are stealing their potential clients because they're cheaper and the clients don't seem to know any better. They just go for the cheaper one. What advice do you have to help photographers compete more effectively in the baby space against this type of competition, or should they even worry about it?
Well, I tell you, I call it the curse of the Groupon. It's like, once Groupon came out and started, dissecting people's value and making it look less and less valuable, it's been a hard sell. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. It is a very hard sell nowadays to sell a luxury product, which is what photography is, right? It's not food and water that people need. So we have to work far harder. I mean, if I look at when I started my baby business in 2007 and 2008, to get them in the door was much easier because, of course, that was when they could just put things on credit. Now people are a lot more wary about what they're spending. They're even more untrustworthy. They're untrusting as they used to be. So when it comes to competition, the worst thing people can do is to look at what everybody else is doing and try to copy what they're doing. You really need to run your business according to the way you want to. And I learned this the hard way too, trying to be all things to all people and know, well, so Susie down the road just did this, or maybe she did a mini session for $50, or maybe I should do that too. It's a race to the bottom. And who really wants to win that, right? It's almost like, and I've said this before and it gets people really annoyed, but I don't know how else to put it, but it's like we've prostituted ourselves to the lowest bidder, hoping that if I undercut my competition, it'll at least get me some business. But at the end of the day, what it's done is caused us, the whole industry, to lose its value. So really, how do we sell value? I think that's the real question, is how do we distinguish ourselves from our competition that creates our own identity that we almost not even put in the mix. So if we're finding that we're getting lost in the shuffle, it means it's confusing for the clients to pick you out of a crowd. So you need to think, what makes you different? Like for me, some people, their sell would be, oh, I'll come to your home. For me, my sell was, you come to to my studio, but we have all the props, we have all the professional lighting. I have track lighting on my ceiling. I even had pictures on my website of the kind of quality of service they're going to get, and made them fall in love with the products on the website. So, just the fact that I was selling products like framed wall art and canvases was different to a lot of other photographers out there. And, we can't always assume that just because now the age of digital, that everybody wants digital files. It's not true, because I realized that soon when I started putting my packages together and focusing on my ideal client. They never asked me about digital files. And at the end, it'd be like, oh, by the way, you've ordered so-and-so. Would you be interested in purchasing these files? She'll be like, what am I going to do with them? I said, well, it's just for archive in case anything happens. Oh, okay. And it's not like, oh, I need them because I want to print them, or I was already putting things on social media for them, so which is another service that I offered. I just needed to think, how do I want people to know me, and how do I want to stand out from the competition? So it's one of those, it's a hard work, and it puts a lot of effort into thinking, and we can't always be thinking about how can it be different, and constantly changing our business model. But what we need to do is to think of what we're good at and own it, so that you become the best known for that one thing. And it could be something very specific, like your thing is you go to people's homes and you measure their walls, and you do in-person viewing, and you bring them a dessert at night and you sit with them and help them design it. That could be your thing. Or the fact that you love to do newborn babies outdoors and in a field could be a thing. It's all of just figuring out what you do well, and then really making people know what it is that you do well. So your strengths will then outshine the competition, because we can't all be doing the same thing. It's just impossible. We're all different.
Exactly. And, I think it's incumbent on photographers to explain and educate potential prospects on these areas of difference through their websites and through their marketing materials and so on. And I think photographers, for some reason, seem to be late catching up to the game of things like content marketing, for example, where the website and their blog and all of that kind of thing is really supposed to make a genuine connection with people, that real sort of human connection, and building relationships online through their websites or through their offline marketing materials, so that then the prospects really get to understand how they're different, why they would want to work with that photographer. But sadly, those kind of things seem to be missing in a lot of cases these days, which is a shame.
Well, it is. And I think what's the problem is that us photographers we just think because I have a camera, we'll take pictures, that's enough to differentiate yourself. That isn't enough. Everybody's a photographer these days. Everyone owns a smartphone, well, just about everybody, and anyone can take pictures. So the way that we differentiate, it's like if I liken it to going to get my hair done. There's several salons in and around my area, but what makes me pick one or the other is the people. Like there's a salon even this hairdresser that I follow, she recently moved from one salon to another, and my loyalty is with her, not with the salon she worked at, because I love the work she does, and I know she knows my hair, and she always gets the color right and never have any issues with her. So I'm loyal to her because she's provided me the service that I love. I don't care how many other offers I get in the mail, or people sending me coupons, which is what, all these other salons trying to offer these deals, or, at the end of the day, it's about brand loyalty and creating that personal connection with people, especially since we're in the service business. And I think that's where photography is hard, because we're both a service and a product, where if we compete on a product basis, it's like competing Walmart to Nordstrom. They still sell clothing, they still sell products, you still have a retail experience, but how the pricing models are hugely different. And it's knowing who it is you want to go after. That if you want to do as many sessions as you possibly can at it and just get people in the door, then great, then a shoot and burn model is probably for you. But if you really want to think about it seriously as a business in terms of actually making money, and because at the end of the day, as photographers, we're in a time for trade business. We literally are trading our time for money, and we produce a product. And I think the problem is the two get confused. Like, a lot of photographers don't value their time. They just think the value should be on the product. And we're not selling shoes that are mass produced or producing a product like perishable foods that people have to restock. We're providing a very customized service that can only be serviced one client at a time. And if we're constantly just slapping on a standard price to the CD or the product that we're offering, we're missing the point. We have to really put the value on our time as service providers first. Because, like, how much would what you pay your accountant just to look at your books, right? Or how much do you pay for a lawyer to register a company? There's no tangible product, but you're paying for their time. And boy, I know my accountant and my lawyer are not cheap. They are going to charge me a good pretty penny per hour. And even for every phone call, they'll charge me for it. So I don't know why photographers have such a hard time in including their time and putting a value on their time. That at the end of the day, the product is what the client's going to have, but that is really where you get your additional profit, is by putting a value on the product too.
Let's switch gears for a second and talk about marketing. One of the questions that I get asked quite often about baby photography is, how do I get my work displayed in doctors' offices and that kind of thing? Because they seem to be having a hard time getting that done, or getting a foot in the door, as it were. Do you have any tips on that topic at all?
Yeah, well, I've heard this question a lot. How do you get your work in there? And, it's not as easy as it looks, but it can be if you have the relationships. Again, it's all about who you know, right? Here's an example. Like, I've been trying to get my work up at this hospital, this OBGYN office was based in one of our main hospitals. And, if I go up there and approach myself and say, hi, I've always believed in going in person. Emailing and phone calls, they can still put their phone down on you. But when you're in person, it's very hard for them to, tell you to go away. But even better, one thing that worked really well for me is finding someone who already has a relationship with them. And what I soon discovered is one of my clients who I had taken pictures of, and in actual fact, I actually didn't even charge her for the session, because it was one of those sort of charity cases that I do now and again, and I kind of, a friend asked or whatever else. And, I did it anyway, and I did a good job for her. And I thought, well, karma's great. Eventually it'll come back. And eventually I discovered that she was actually, her OB was one of the OBs at this practice that I've been trying to get in. And I said to her, you know what? Can you talk to the office manager for me and tell her about what it is that I do? I would love the opportunity to provide them with some free wall art for their offices. And if you're able to help me get me in the door, I'd gladly I'd print you one of these, your favorite images, and enlarge it for her. And she was all over that, because she couldn't afford to pay the actual retail price of this. So she had an incentive. Boy, did she go to bat for me. She made sure that she spoke to the OB, and then she followed up with the office manager. And eventually, when she said, here's the office manager's name, if you phone her, I phoned her. She's, we've heard such great things about you. When can you come in and check out our offices so you can measure our walls? I was like, really? If only I had known this before. So, there's always ways to skin a cat. There's other ways. I have gone cold turkey before and just gone in and said, okay, this is what I have. But those were the days when one of the particular places was one of these holistic type of baby, where you got to practice yoga and, baby chiropractor things. They were just opening up their business. So I managed to get in there before anyone else had heard about it. And of course, the most annoying thing is, as soon as my stuff's up there, then of course they get approached by, and then if I don't maintain that relationship, and that's also mistakes I made, is sometimes I would leave it too long to go back and visit these people. All of a sudden, my stuff had been replaced with somebody else's. So, I've gone through all the effort to make the relationships, but if you don't keep it up, if you don't continually keep in contact with these people, for me, cookies and flowers go a long way. Far more effective than Facebook advertising or advertising online is just to go pop in and visit. How is everybody doing? Buy them lunch now and again. Send them a thank you. Every time they would refer a client to me, I'd send them a box of chocolates. So they knew, they had the relationship with me and they liked me, so that even when these other photographers off the street would walk in and say, hi, I'm a photographer, can I put my stuff on your walls? They'd be like, thanks, but no thanks. We already have a relationship with Mimika. Again, and as I said, it's stuff we've talked about in the previous episode, and it's in every type of business. I've realized it's how you treat people and having those relationships really helps to set you apart, and helps your brand loyalty, and it helps you get your foot into the door into places that ordinarily wouldn't be open for you.
Chocolate and cookies always work with me. I'm not too fussed about flowers. I can't eat those. But, this whole sort of method of getting art on the wall of places like, OB offices and that kind of thing, is it really as effective as people think it is?
I will tell you, yes and no. I found that when I first get the work up on there, and of course the other thing is I made some mistakes about saying, I'll just offer you for free. And I was out of pocket almost $2,000 trying to get these portraits framed that were at least 16 by 20 or larger, and realized, okay, this had to pay itself. The first 6 months seems to work because it's new. When something's new in a room and you notice it, you're like, oh, but I found after that people get used to it and they start to ignore it because it's something that's, and I made the mistake of leaving it too long to update my stuff. So eventually people would just see it as part of the furniture. So it is a big financial investment, first of all, to get the stuff up there, because usually people like these offices don't want to pay you for it. You kind of have to offer it as a donation, or you give them the option to buy it, but to get yourself in the door, you literally have to pay out of your own pocket to get the things printed. And the other thing is to keep up the marketing material. Like, eventually I got, not that I necessarily got lazy, but I was like, I don't want to have to go all the way into town again and update my cards. So they would never tell me like, okay, you've run out of cards or brochures, where I always insisted on having my name and my web address on every photo. So even on the portrait, you'd have, photographed by Mimika Cooney and my web address. When it was new, it would get traction. Once it was 6 months old, people wouldn't notice anymore, because often in an OB's office, like a OBGYN, a mom would come in several times for a visit. The first time she would notice, and she'd probably think, oh, yes, I need a photo. I've just found out I'm pregnant. And then, oh, yes, I need to do that. And then eventually she forgets about it. So for me, wall art on the walls is more about brand awareness and them seeing it and going, oh, that's nice. But what is even more effective is getting your stuff in the bags. Like when a mom falls pregnant, she goes to her OB, they usually give her a little welcome bag, which has a lot of vouchers. And usually the formula companies love to stuff their stuff in there, like samples and, what to expect, and free magazines. If I could get my card, or even better, have one of the OBs hand somebody the card. And very few OBs would do that, but like at the 3D 4D ultrasound, the big difference in my referrals was the fact that she would actually hand them the card when they checked out and said, oh, here's a voucher for, it would give them like a free 8x10 if they booked a session. She would say, here's, and with her as well, offering a kickback to her, like for a referral fee for everybody who booked a session with me, then she would get a referral fee. So she had, an incentive to promote it. That is actually more effective than the wall art. So I would say that it's yes in terms of getting your name out there and people to see your work for that awareness. But out of the 8 years I've had my wall art up at several different hospitals, I think maybe only a handful of people have actually said, oh, I saw your artwork on the walls, I'd love to book a session with you. It's usually just a confirmation that they've seen you on the wall, then they see your postcard sitting on the table, then they see your ad in the magazine, and then they hear a friend talk about you, and then they see your friend's photos on Facebook. It's all cumulative. It's not just a one-trick pony that you do one thing and people come running. And that's the biggest lesson I learned, was that I couldn't rely on just one thing.
And that brings me on to my next question, which is, what would be your top 3 marketing strategies then for attracting new moms as clients, other than the wall art stuff?
So, the wall art is definitely, once you're up there and you've got some money to spend, you can do that. But again, it's all relationships. Like if you're starting out and you want to break into the business model, the first thing I did was get in my car, take a little portfolio of my work, after getting a few portfolio images together, and approaching the 3D 4D ultrasound company, or going to the baby boutique down the road. Now, of course, nowadays, I've been teaching this for the last 5 years, but then it was like a new idea. Now it's not so new because a lot of these places have been approached so many times. But again, it's like using those relationships. Like, who do you know? Like, do you have a friend who's pregnant? Does she have a good relationship with her OB? Does she have a good relationship with the place she plays yoga with? She does yoga, or does she have a good relationship with her chiropractor? Kind of tapping into other people's networks. It doesn't cost you anything other than time, and just getting your foot in the door and helping get. And then like things like approaching the boutique and saying, events were really good. Like if they're going to have host a little mini baby shower where they want to, say for Christmas, we're having a holiday party and you can come and take pictures of the party or the event. Like 1 year, in actual fact, it was the day before everything fell to pieces. It was the Sunday before the Monday in September 2008, where the stock exchange totally dissolved. That Sunday, the day before that everything went bad, is we actually hosted a baby shower and we collaborated efforts. So I had I was the designated photographer, so I was walking around taking pictures. I also had vouchers in the bag. Then we had the 3D ultrasound lady was there. We had a lactation consultant. We had a chiropractor. We had the owner of the baby boutique. So we all pooled our resources. We hired out a hotel, and we created like a little mini lunch so they could have these little talks. Like we had a nutritionist, we had an OB talk, and the whole idea was everybody collaborates and everybody gets to share resources and share their database. So I would invite my clients or people that I'd know. And I did get quite a few leads from there. But of course, that happened to be that it took a little longer to convert them because of the whole economy changing. And then people were like, oh, we can't afford this anymore. We're going to have to pull back a bit. But, looking back at that, it's always thinking of, instead of me having to pay for an advert in a baby magazine where you just a name and a logo, how could I actually get that referral from someone else? Because if a pregnant mom is going to ask her friends and the people she trusts first before she goes and looks at an ad in the magazine or an ad on Facebook. So you've got to think of the mindset of where your client's coming from, like what is it that motivates them and what is it that they want.
Right. One last question. For photographers who are new to all of this, what would you say are the top mistakes that they're making, or things that they tend to overlook when getting into baby photography?
Well, number one, I know we've touched on it, is not valuing, putting a price on their time, just saying pricing their work based on, say, like the CD. Oh, my CD is $99 and includes a session. You're going to be out of business really quickly. You have to look at the numbers and what it is that you need to run it as a business, because especially in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, I've noticed a lot of new photographers who enter the market think that just the time that I spend in front of the client taking the pictures is what I get charged for, or I charge for. It's actually a lot more than that. We've got to think of the before and all the marketing and all the emails and the administration that goes into it, as well as after the effect, like the retouching and how much time you spend on the computer. I really think we need to value our time more and actually look at the numbers of how much is this time it's going to take, because no one wants to work for minimum wage, and I sure as heck don't want to be a starving artist. Thank you very much. And the other thing is wasting money on things that don't work. Like, some people have had good responses. I've had terrible responses with direct mail, like buying a list or renting a list and then sending a postcard to new people or new moms. Usually they are old, the leads are old. Like, I was having these baby postcards, and like some old granny phoned me the one day, why, love, are you sending me these postcards? I don't have a baby in the house. For all I know, the previous owner who sold the house 5 years ago maybe had a baby. But I'm like, wow, that was a total epic waste of time and money.
Right.
And spending too much time on Facebook, thinking that just Facebook and social media is going to get you. Social media is more of an awareness. I think new photographers need to get off their computers and go build relationships. Go and build relationships with people who are already in front of your clients. See how you can help. Always ask to provide your service. And I know there's a big thing about saying, oh, you can't just, offer yourself for free. There's a time and place to offer your services for free. Like if an OB is having a meet and greet their patients and you offer to go and take pictures of the event for their website and you give them the images for their website for free, that is great, because you are showing that you're building that relationship with that OB, because they will then refer you to their clients. I just think, that we need to think of it as a whole thing. Like, how do we want our business to run? And then, of course, depending on where the circles you fly in, who are the people you're going to attract. So you don't want to be going to places that are not going to attract your right clients and waste money on things. So, yeah, it's kind of really knowing where you're going and identifying. And I know it's hard when you start, like, I don't know who my client is, who do I want to service? And it's a growth process. It's fine to try things and to see what would work. I mean, I'm continually trying things. Even 11 years in the business, I try something and this year it works and next year it tanks. So you just constantly got to think of, how can I get my name out there? How can I, build relationships and things like, once I get a referral from a client, I then go and send that client a big box of chocolates and a voucher towards a future session because she referred a friend. So then she's going to feel good about the referral. So all these little things about making people, know, like, and trust you and then fall in love with you, I think is really going to make a huge difference.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Well, this has been great. There's been so much valuable stuff in here, as usual, that folks will have to listen to this obviously several times to get all of that out. But on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your experience. And I'll make sure that people know how they can get a hold of your books that we talked about earlier on, as well as how they can hook up with you with the Capture School and that kind of thing. So thanks again. It's been great. And we might have to make this this a regular thing?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you about my experiences in, things I learned from being a family photographer and a wedding photographer. So there's lots of things we can cover.
Indeed. Mimika, thanks again. This has been wonderful.
Thanks again for having me. Take care.